Fantastic. Thank you everyone for inviting me to the session. I do know careers is always top of mind for all of us, even myself, as we kind of go through our own journeys. And I'd love to share a little bit more about you and demystify what does it take to apply to Google, kind of how you can work on in terms of finding your next jobs, if this is the moment that you're looking for, or maybe you're looking for it like 1 or 2, 3 years down the line. So again, a very, very interesting fun fact we always love to share in our presentations is for me, before COVID times, I got the chance to visit almost every Google office in APAC, so at least one in each country that we are present in. And I was very lucky to visit our 2 data centers. So this is almost over 10 offices. Fingers crossed we can all safely travel again, but I loved just meeting teammates from different cultures, embracing the different localized designs of the offices, and just learning about the great work that we did in different countries. And thank you earlier for the intro. Yes, I lead the talent engagement team. So I've been in recruiting kind of for the past 8 years at Google Singapore. And before that, I'm actually born and raised in the Bay Area, very, very close to our headquarters, actually. But ironically, I've never, ever been based in Mountain View. So I think what brought me to Asia and to work in Google and APAC is just the fact that we have millions of users here, so many communities, businesses, candidates for us to really reach out to and kind of bring the Google magic to. So these are just kinds of numbers that you see of all the work that we do in APAC and kind of our reach. And being in Singapore, it is one of the headquarters, especially for our non-tech teams that we sit in. And just as kind of a lot of people think about is what is Google culture? And for me, it kind of comes in 4 layers. I think what I'm fascinated about when it comes to working at Google is the fact that there are lots of products that one could possibly work for. And throughout my journey, there's been a lot of internal mobility chances. So you could be working at a team that does one product for 2, 3 years, and you're like, wow, I want to grow my skills in another product. And moving from team to team is very encouraged at Google and really helps in terms of your career growth. Workplace, just how our environments physically are created so that Googlers are excited to come to work. We're happy to come to work. We want to be in these collaborative spaces and innovative environments. And in Singapore, actually, we don't have set desks of where you sit. We have a dynamic working environment where you can actually just sit wherever you want for that day, and which allows a lot more collaboration to happen. And you might just bump into other teammates without even knowing and then share an exchange of ideas. So it's kind of why we make our workplaces more collaborative and just a place where employees want to be at. I think last 2 is the team and the mission, just kind of what we are doing at Google. We want to make sure the information is accessible to everyone, whether you're in Indonesia, whether you're a user in Brazil. We want to make sure that we're having Google for everyone and that we're building our products for everyone. And we love working in our different teams, in our collaborative environments to do so. So you're hearing this and you're like, okay, I kind of want to join Google. What's it take? And I think one of the best things about Google is the people. And that's why our hiring process really looks at, are you a fit for the teams? Is this something that you will be successful in as well? And are you someone that we want to work with in the future? So just to demystify kind of what the process looks like and where you can start, I think it's maybe for me to give you a better idea of how the Google org is structured. So we'll have a lot of our tech teams, our engineering, data center roles, infrastructure, etc. And then we have something we call GBO. And that's where you'll see job postings around marketing, business, partner development, etc. And then we have kind of what we call our GAF roles, which are a lot of the operations behind the scenes, like people ops, recruiting, finance, our legal teams all fall under this function. So you'll kind of see as you're on the jobs and career sites that Google's kind of grouped their job categories in these different structures. So I think when we're all looking for jobs, it's like, what's that first step? How do I get in the door and how do I get known across the millions of applications that Google gets or even other large companies? I think one tip we like to give a lot of people is research the company and the team. You'll be surprised how many candidates that we talk to that actually have no idea what team they're applying for, and they just applied for it because of the name of the company. But it makes a huge difference to the recruiter and the hiring manager when you've done your research, you've looked at our competitors for that product, you've researched kind of who's on the team, what the team does, what did the team do last year, were there any articles about what the team did? This will give you the upper hand and also give you a better idea of, okay, I know what the team does. How can I bring value onto that team? And it'll help you kind of tier your conversations and gather your resume so that it's more attractive to these teams that you're applying for. Secondly, be intentional about what roles you apply to. I think we've seen a lot of candidates who apply to like 10, 20 roles at Google, all within a week. And I think now the maximum is actually 3 to prevent that. But really, it's more of a benefit to you as a candidate if you really know kind of what you're looking for. And it's fair to say not everyone knows what job is perfect for them, but you should at least know an idea of where your strengths lie. Where can you bring the most value to the organization, and kind of understand the job postings to see in a way like, oh yeah, I am qualified. I do meet the minimum qualifications, and therefore the likelihood of me getting a callback will be higher. So really think about kind of what you're applying to and where, and check the qualifications. I think that's really important. A lot of candidates actually don't look at that. Lastly, keep your resume 1 to 2 pages. Recruiters on average, maybe take up to 8 seconds to look at a resume. So if it's way too long, we may not see the important information that you put on the 4th or 5th page. So really practice being concise and practice showing impact. A lot of people, because resume writing is really hard, I hate doing it myself as well, but I think a lot of people end up putting their job descriptions. They'll just copy what the job role and description was and put it in bullet form. But that's not what we want to see. We know what you do there. We can ask you over the phone. What we want to see is what impact did you make? Can you show some quantitative data on the increase in users you brought to the platform? Can you show us how operationally it brought what percentage more efficiency to your team? What did you launch? Was there a site that we can look at? So these are things to keep in mind as you kind of put that first foot in the door of your application and resume. Oops. And what does Google look for? We look at 4 main attributes. So the first one is called general cognitive ability, and this comes around a lot of problem solving. How does this candidate think through problems they've never seen before, and how do they communicate that out loud? So we're not looking for the right answer here. We're looking for how do you go about problem solving? How would you think about this process, and what would be your thought process to get to a solution? Second is role-related knowledge. If I'm applying for a marketing role, I sure hope to have some marketing experience or qualifications on my resume. If I'm applying to an engineering role, there has to be some coding experience on my resume. And so that's what role-related knowledge is looking for. Googliness. A lot of people ask, what is googliness exactly? So it could mean a lot of different things depending on which Googler you talk to. But above it all, there's everything from being humble, wanting to be a team player, showing respect, wanting to be able to bring the team spirit and look for a goal together. So all of these things are small parts of googliness. And basically the question is, would I want you to be on my team? Would I want to be teammates with you? And that's kind of what we look for in terms of googliness. Lastly, it's leadership. And leadership doesn't always mean like, oh, you need to be VP or like the manager of a team. Leadership can be in an individual contributor, in an IC role as well. Can you voice out concerns if there are? Do you have the courage to lead a team even if maybe you haven't led it before? Can we count on you? Are you reliable? Are you dependent to lead a project or perhaps be accountable for a certain outcome of a team? So these are kind of the 4 attributes that we look for at Google. And so what does the interview process really look like? So for our full-time roles, once you apply online, recruiters will screen through your resume, and you'll probably, if you get shortlisted, you'll get a phone screen and a phone call. And this is a call to check a fit both ways. The recruiter wants to know more about you, but a good chance for you to also really know more about the role that you applied for. And then you'll be asked to come on site or virtually take about 3 to 4 interviews. And then you'll go through a hiring committee and then to offer stages. So this is kind of the usual experience that most candidates go through, and it could take 1 month to sometimes even 3 months. If you have any friends or juniors that are going through university, internship roles are very similar. Internships at Google are for currently studying students in their bachelor's, master's, or even MBA and PhD degrees. And they usually go through 1 less interview for internships. All right, so say you got your foot in the door, your resume was looked at, and you went through the recruiter screen. Now, what are some tips for your interviews? We'll start with some non-tech roles. I know a majority of you here are mainly focused on maybe coding or engineering roles, but in case some of you are interested in more analyst, or maybe like Google Cloud roles where it's half technical and half client-facing, you may need to do a GCA interview, so a non-tech and non-coding interview. And as I mentioned before, they really focus on how you problem solve. And so what's really important here is to make sure you're able to communicate and talk through your answers and how you would go about a certain situation. So what they want to see is, 1, do you understand the question? Most likely, it might be a scenario you've never heard of. So you have to make sure you ask questions back to the recruiter or interviewer and say, hey, can I clarify? Or, hey, is this what you mean? I just want to make sure I understand the question. You'll be surprised how many candidates just try to answer really fast, and then their answer is totally wrong because they actually didn't understand the question fully. So take your time and really make sure you clarify any questions to the interviewer. Secondly, maybe your preparation strategy, and maybe you want to take 30 seconds to ask the interviewer, hey, let me just think about my thoughts. Or maybe you want to list them down and call them out like, hey, I'm going to think of this answer in 3 categories. So kind of how you prepare and answer the question is something they'll be looking for. And then also kind of evidence. How are you backing up your solution? What's your thought process on how you arrived at that outcome? And above it all, kind of how are you communicating this? Are you just kind of thinking to yourself and barely saying things out loud and just thinking quietly? Or are you actually sharing with them like your thought process? So that's going to be really important in the non-tech interviews. And now, what if you're going for a technical role that does require a coding interview? A lot of the engineering skills we will be assessing are usually data structures and algorithms, kind of how you understand the code. And still, we're looking about how do you problem solve? And believe it or not, even though it's a coding interview, they're very interested in your communication skills. And of course, you won't see brain teasers, but they will be wondering if you're just quietly coding for 45 minutes. They're going to be like, this person's not really communicating with me. So you want to talk out loud about like why you're doing it this way and say like, and share your solutions out loud. It'll also help because if they see you going down the wrong path, they may hint to you and share, hey, have you thought about this side? And so that's why communicating can also benefit yourself as a candidate. Some resources that might help you in a technical interview. I think mock interviews are the most helpful, whether you're in a tech interview or a non-tech interview. Just verbalizing it out to another person as if they were the interviewer can be super helpful. And here are some other links or sites that you might help if you're going for a coding interview. And whether or not you're going for a technical or non-technical interview, you may be asked to do a googliness and leadership interview. You might not even know you're going into a googliness and leadership interview, but these attributes will definitely be assessed either in one interview or across all the interviews. So sometimes they'll ask for scenarios where you showed strong leadership, or where you had to make a decision, or where you had to find a solution with a difficult stakeholder or teammate, or how you influenced another senior stakeholder. So these are all kinds of scenarios that they may ask you about. So it's really good to kind of have some examples at hand that you prepare before you go into any of your interviews. Lastly, some final tips, and I think we have a few slides left, so get your questions ready if you have any questions about the recruitment process or anything I shared. Listen to your interviewers' hints. Surprisingly, interviewers want you to be successful. As scary as interviewing can be, at Google, we encourage interviewers to really guide the candidate in a way so that they are successful. So they might suggest different ideas. They might have follow-up questions to ask you to think differently than the question that you propose. So don't freak out or panic that, oh my gosh, I got the wrong answer. You just take their hint, take their suggestion and say, let me think about that for a second and respond accordingly as well. Like I said earlier, make sure you ask clarifying questions. Don't just zip in. It doesn't matter how fast you answer. It matters more that you understand the question and you're able to give an answer that's more relevant to the question that they asked. Make sure you're always communicating. The more you kind of talk out loud, the better, whether you're coding or not coding in the interview. And just get prepared. The best way is to kind of just list down all the past projects you've done, different examples of how you worked with different people, and just have that in your pocket before you go into the interview. And hopefully you've practiced kind of talking about those examples out loud. So a few more resources that you can kind of look into and dabble around if you don't know already. Some of you may already know the Tech Dev Guide. So there's interview resources, but also technical resources for anyone's maybe beginning in their technical career or wanting to switch. So there are many different paths within that site that you can consider if you want to kind of look into them as well. And we also have the Business Dev Guide, which launched recently. So if you are interested in a more non-tech career, maybe more client-facing, more toward the business route, this is a nice resource for you to look into as well. And finally, if you want to keep practicing your coding skills, kind of looking at different coding questions, you probably all already know Kickstart as well, but I do want to emphasize that it is super helpful. A lot of candidates that we see do practice kind of going through different coding problems by participating in one of the Kickstart rounds. So another great resource for you to think about. It really helps you kind of hone in on your data structures and algorithms skills. So if you haven't looked into this, it might be something good to think about if you are looking to go into an engineering role. All right, and as promised, hopefully that wasn't too long, but now I'm here to answer any questions that you might have about working at Google or the hiring process, or maybe just looking for a job in general. So happy to answer any questions from the audience. Cool. So I think we have our first question here from 𝗵𝗿𝗶𝗿𝗶. Thank you for your question. Is the 𝗤𝗏 challenge still actively used for recruiting? So I believe in different countries and offices, they do look at this challenge. So I think this is more for you to practice. And I think some recruiters might look into it. So not 100% guarantee, but it's always a good platform to practice on. All right, thank you, Ganesh, for your question. What are the keynotes that Google looks at from a senior engineering manager? So I think here, assuming this is a team lead role, they'll definitely look at your past people management experience. They will definitely dive into that in the interviews and possibly also into systems design. So I think half of the interviews will be technical, but also the other half will be around people management and thinking about strategy and leadership as well. So hopefully that helps. All right, another question. I'm sorry if I don't say your name Well, Dulan Jana, thank you for asking. Is there any career opening periods for the, I think you're saying year. So if I understand your question correctly, please, correct me if I'm wrong. You're asking kind of when our careers open throughout the year. So at Google, actually, they're opened all year round. Go ahead to the Google Careers site and you can filter by location. You'll be able to see all the job openings that are open at the present time listed there. So you can kind of go through the career site and just explore on the different jobs you might want. Ooh, this is a great question. Thank you, Uditha. Do work permits matter when you apply? So as a recruiter, I will be very honest here. Work permits do matter. It will be very clear on the job posting if you need to have work authorization for that country. So where it's absolutely mandatory, they will note it on the job posting. But if you don't see it there, then that means that country is able to support visas. Now, there are some nationalities that visas are easier to get for and some not. But if there isn't like a line that says you can't apply, then I would just go ahead and submit the application and hope that maybe if you do progress further in the process, you can talk to your recruiter about the different visa possibilities. But that's a great question. All right, on to the next question. Thank you, 𝗖𝗿𝗄𝗖𝗍. I will, say it short because I don't want to ruin your name. How does work-life balance is maintained within Google? Oh, this is such a great question. Absolutely. I think work-life balance means something different to every individual. So every Googler kind of has the power to kind of define what work-life balance is. But what at Google, we do encourage everyone to take time off, take vacation, and we have very flexible schedules. So you don't have to be at work at a certain time. You can create your own schedule how it is. If you're a parent and you have kids to take care of at home, you can manage your schedule so that you can maybe do all your meetings in a day. When you're at home, you can spend time with kids, and then maybe late at night when they're sleeping, you can do your emails. So work-life balance is achievable. There are very busy times at Google where you're like, oh my gosh, I'm working so long hours. But it's really up to you on how you maintain those hours, how you want to balance it. Some people choose to work the long hours. Some people choose to work the shorter hours. But really, the importance is what is your impact in the work that you do? And how do you bring value to your team and work towards your team success? If you can achieve that, it's very flexible in terms of working at Google. Great question. All right, next question from Ganesh. Is there any way I will know the engineering hierarchy in Google so that I can apply accordingly? This is coming back to kind of the more you know about the team, the better. And I would stay away from the word hierarchy. I think at Google, we don't necessarily see it as a hierarchy. But maybe this is a good chance for you to kind of look into what is a senior engineer, what is a director, what is a manager, what is a team lead. I think the Google search, like searching on the internet is helpful. Maybe talking to friends who are at Google. Some of the resources on the career site, you can also see kind of what does a Google engineering manager do. So all of those can help. So I would definitely, there's no like site that you can see all the different organizational structures at Google. There's no site. But what you can do is research on your own side, talking to different people that maybe work at Google, kind of reading up on different sites that might share more information. And always reading on our career site will help you know more about the role and what's expected. Cool. And 𝗖𝗍𝗄𝗖𝗍, thanks for sharing that. That's a relief. All right, 𝗖𝗍𝗄𝗍, thank you for your question. What are the particular areas to apply for the undergraduates? Love it. Looks like we have some students on the call. We have internships across all the different areas. So we have non-tech internships in business, marketing. They're all called business internships. So look for those kind of internship roles. We also have software engineering and our STEP program. So our STEP program is for year 2 engineering students. Our internship program is for year 3 engineering students. We also have data center and our cloud customer engineering roles, which are half technical, half client facing. So take a look. The recruitment season for Southeast Asia starts around August, September, and it's just recently closed for internship hiring. But great question. All right, Dinithy, thank you for your question. What are the research internship opportunities available for undergrads? So I'll be very honest here. In Singapore, we don't have research internship roles yet, but I do know in other countries in APAC there are. So definitely keep a lookout. I think, for example, Japan has research opportunities, Korea as well, and the US and the UK definitely. So if you're open to working outside of APAC, do look into internship opportunities, and India as well. So different, and China actually, almost every country outside of Singapore has research internship opportunities. So take a look through the site and just kind of search for research internships in the internship career site, and you'll be able to maybe look into that.